Hello and welcome along to Tackling Sport Podcast. It's Daniel Hussey here, joined alongside me by my brother Sean.
How's it go?
And delighted to welcome a guest for this week to talk all things football. It's our Irish football correspondent, Oisin McQueirns. Oisin, welcome back to the podcast.
Lads, thanks. Good to be here as always.
Yeah, listen, Oisin, for you, it's been a busy few days in football. We're going to talk a little bit about Liverpool City and the Watford game, or the Watford managerial roundabout that keeps going on, and then the Azerbaijan Ireland game. But maybe a little bit on Liverpool City. What do you think of the game? Because for me, the quality in that second half is probably unparalleled to anything we'll ever see this season.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. One of the best games I've seen for a very, very long time. First half was a little bit like the start of the game was a little bit lax in the sense that Liverpool I thought were poor. I didn't think City were too great either. They came into it eventually, followed and started to get joy against James Milner, and they kind of started to kind of get a little bit more control. I didn't think De Bruyne was very good. I think De Bruyne was actually great throughout, but especially in the first half, I thought he was a little bit sloppy in possession. But City looked really strong in the first half. As they grew into it, like they looked like they were so hard to break down. You could see why they'd only conceded one goal in their opening 7 or so games. But then in the second half, fair play to Klopp, like he made the necessary adjustments, and Liverpool really looked much better in the second half than they did in the first. And the game kind of kicked into life with with Mane's goal. And that Salah goal was unbelievable. Like I think all 4 goals were of quality. I mean, I know De Bruyne's was a deflection, but the build-up play, in the build-up, I thought the play was quite nice, and I just thought it was a really outstanding game. And like if I'm a Chelsea fan or I'm a United fan watching that, I'm worried. I really am, because I'm thinking like we're not kind of quite there. I know Chelsea have looked in part outstanding, but the past few games, 2 or 3 games, I thought they've just looked a little bit void of ideas. They just haven't looked like I don't know if it seems like Tuchel might be overthinking it a little bit. He changed quite a bit at the weekend. But to go back to, I suppose, your original question, I thought it was a super game, really real high quality. Salah was outstanding. The goal he scored was a joke. I thought it was one of the best goals I've seen for a long time. And even his pass from Mane's goal was so sharp too. And then you look at Foden. I thought Foden was excellent. Took his goal really well. I thought some of the defending was good from both sides, really. I just thought it was a great game. Just really enjoyed it. Would have loved for it to go on another 10, 15 minutes even. I thought like it was one of those where it's 2-2 and you're thinking, could it be one of these where I kind of was thinking back to the game where Coutinho scored the winner. I can't remember what year that was, like 14 or 15, maybe even 13. I'm not sure, but one of those where Coutinho grabbed that last minute winner. I'm thinking someone's going to kind of make themselves a hero here. And I think Matip had the chance to do it. I know it was a great block from Rodri. In the end, I think that was a 2-2. But no, I just thought it was an outstanding game. Really enjoyable. Real high quality. And I think it proves, and I don't think it needed to be proved necessarily, but it does. It hammers a home that Liverpool are in the title run this season without a shadow of a doubt. They keep everyone fit. They really are. They look strong. They prove that they can adjust when they need to. Mo Salah's in unbelievable form. I've seen people say, is he the best in the world right now? You could probably make the argument for it. I think he's genuinely up there for sure with probably the likes of someone like a Lewandowski right now. So yeah, for me it was just a really enjoyable game. Just a great Sunday at 4:30 game. Just exactly what you want from your Super Sunday. 2 teams at the top of the table. Like it was just a game of high quality, especially in that second half. Now I know first half wasn't quite as good, but overall it was just a really enjoyable game. And I think there's no question that those two are probably they're the 2 sides to beat really this season.
Yeah, Sean, just on the narrative from games, and Oisin's narrative there, it's kind of been broadly agreed with that Liverpool City are the 2 best teams in the league. 2 weeks ago, everyone was saying Chelsea are going to walk the league. It's good to kind of look coldly at these things. And when I look at the odds, that City are odds-on favourites, but Chelsea are firm second favourites for the title, and Liverpool are actually a good bit back in third. Would you go along with that based on Sunday's game? Because I have to kind of agree with Oisin. I really see it coming down between Liverpool and City, but people are still really liking Chelsea. More importantly, the odds compilers.
Yeah, and the thing about Liverpool in that first half, I think a few of their big weaknesses got shown. I think they really missed Ronaldo on Sunday, especially in that first half. I think, Curtis Jones, that midfield 3 is just it's missing something at the moment. Fabinho, Henderson, and Jones, and Jones was brilliant in midweek, but I just thought he just couldn't really get to grips with the game. I actually thought Jordan Henderson was really good. I thought it was one of his better games. But I really felt like Liverpool had kind of almost 2 passengers, and you can't afford that against Man City. And Milner, it's very difficult at 35 years of age to, we have to remember playing out of position up against one of the best young players in the world. I just thought Liverpool had a couple of passengers, and even the front three of Liverpool in that first half weren't great. Particularly Jota, I expected a little bit more from him. So Liverpool were off the boil, and Man City they just couldn't get the right people in for the right chances. And you don't want De Bruyne running onto a header, but he should really score. And Foden had a couple of chances that he should have scored. And at half time, I think everyone thought Liverpool needed it, and they took advantage of it after the break. But yeah, with Chelsea, where they impress me is that they're quite ruthless. You don't see them flap around for a 0-0 draw. They're very often get the first goal in the game. The first goal in the game is so important if you're playing a lesser side, and you have to try and break them down even more. But when Chelsea go in front, they don't concede heaps of goals, and I think that's the key with them at the moment. If you're Liverpool, I think it relies on a couple of players. I don't necessarily think they've the best 11 in the league. I know a few people have said that. I'm not quite sure. I think there are a couple of areas that they're a little bit shy, and obviously Alexander Arnold's going to come back. Do think in midfield, Keita obviously hasn't hit the heights that you'd expect from him, and they pay big money for him. You have Thiago, obviously when he comes back in, he'll fit in there. But just on Sunday, I just thought they were a couple of players shy, and that's the depth. They just don't have it. They can't fathom losing a Salah. If you tell City you're going to lose Mahrez or you're going to lose a Foden like they have at times this season, they'll probably cope with it. But I just felt as if Liverpool are that little bit shy, and Chelsea, they obviously have one of the most well-rounded squads in European football at the moment. There's not a whole heap of areas. You look at their midfield, it's so strong. Kante, Jorginho, Kovacic, the new guy Sol, Mason Mount. You're looking in the forward areas as well. So Chelsea and City probably are the two best squads in the league. You could probably put United and Liverpool maybe in the tier below them in terms of that. But Liverpool certainly know how to get the job done, and I don't think they will be far away. But it's any sort of injuries to that squad, and they're right up against it again.
Yeah, for you, Oisin, just on the title race. Sorry. Yeah, what are your kind of thoughts on?
No, I think Sean makes a good point. It is that squad depth, and you look at the other teams, and they have 2 to 3 players, really strong players for every position. And it's kind of like you look at City. I think their best kind of, Pep from fantasy football managers everywhere. I think Pep gets a bit of stick for switching and chopping and changing and stuff like that every week. But it's one of his best assets in a way, because he can kind of just plug in certain different players, and you have your standouts, obviously the likes of De Bruyne and things like that, but you can kind of plug in a lot of players in that City team, put them in different positions, and they'll still do a really good job, and it'll still be a flow to their play. I don't think Liverpool just don't have that. And spoke about, obviously Alexander Arnold will come back, but there was a glaring hole there when Milner. You can't blame Milner. Milner's a brilliant professional, brilliant footballer, but he's 36, 37 years of age, and when you've got someone like Phil Foden up against him, it's going to be a weakness there. And maybe it would have been a weakness with Alexander Arnold too, but where Alexander Arnold thrives, his chance was created going forward. I think Sky Sports put up a graphic, and he was first in chances created, first in loads of different stats, attacking stats for Liverpool this season. So to kind of just echo Sean's point, really, they just don't have. Where they might fall is when the fixtures really start to pile up, and if they go deep in Europe, which I think most probably expect them to do, and then around Christmas time and things like that, it's going to get really tough for them. And if they lose a Salah, if they lose a Mane, if they lose, you can't. They saw the impact that losing Van Dijk had on the team, and the impact that's going to have on Matip as well, because I think Matip's playing really well. I think that's partially due to having Van Dijk beside him. I think he'll make anyone look good, but same with midfield too. And when you don't have or you've got Curtis Jones, they've lost Harvey Elliott, Wijnaldum left. Sean, you mentioned that, so it probably is a fair point to suggest that that's where if there is to be a downfall, it'll be just the fact that they just don't have as much real quality squad depth as your Chelsea's or your Cities. They don't have that 2 players for every position, 3 players for every position that's probably needed.
The one thing as well, Dan, that I haven't watched Pep for a few years with Man City now, and during the game it really hit home to me when Man City's one of their marquee players last year was John Stones, and he's sitting on the bench, and Pep has this way, and he has done. And I remember first kind of with Gundogan a couple of years ago, when I was going around telling everyone these were City's 2 best players, and yet they weren't starting. And
which 2 players, Sean? Sorry. You just broke up there for a sec. Go on.
With Gundogan and Bernardo Silva a couple of years ago, and then even last year you see Stones being brought in, and this year Stones and Gundogan really come to the fore. And this year, there was massive rumours that Bernardo Silva was going to leave the club, and having watched his performance on Sunday, I thought he was breathtaking. To play against Liverpool, to beat that press, you're going to need those little touches, those quick movements, and he did it. 3 or 4, particularly in that second half when Liverpool really, got into their groove. He was just outstanding, and he had that brilliant turn, and in the first half, that dribble to create the chance for Foden. There was obviously the incident with Milner. Out the game, he was outstanding, and for Pep to trust him in that midfield too with Rodri, who I thought was really sloppy, just shows you how good a player he is. And Pep has this way with players where he just reinvigorates them for a season almost. We've seen in the past with Sterling and Sané having a couple of years either side, and maybe not being the fully consistent. But Pep, even I look at Mahrez towards the end of last season in the Champions League, Pep just has this way of working with players, and it's absolutely mind-boggling when you see how he just all of a sudden can switch their games up that extra level. Stones being an example last year, but Bernardo Silva has a couple of outstanding against Chelsea as well. A couple of times this season, he's really impressed me so far, and I thought that performance away at Anfield from a midfielder, is as accomplished as you're gonna get.
Yeah, on the comment then here, Sean, do you want to release your inner Micah Richards for a quick word on the second yellow card before we move on?
I think Micah Richards was going down the right route with it. I think the fact that the game is at Anfield has a massive part, and I think we've seen that for a long time. There's just certain things for ref where I have a big thing is where they give it on what they think they've seen, not what they have seen, but they also give it on the occasion, and they can't quite get the context of the game out of their heads, and everything's bigged up. And I just felt with that. Now the only thing you could say is the referee might think it's Henderson that makes the original foul, and Henderson doesn't actually, it collides into him, it's Milner. But I just think it's really poor ref, and from someone who as well gave 6 yellow cards. So it wasn't as if he was, keeping his cards close to his chest. And I do think the idea of sending a Liverpool player off, James Milner as well, James Milner is one of the, he's a good pro, as Souness would call him. He's a good guy. He wouldn't do anything like that. But if it's someone else, if it's a Xhaka or a Fernandinho a couple of years ago, it's someone like that. It's a red card. So I just think I did agree with Micah Richards on Sunday after the game. I think he was going down the right line, and it happens that it happens when Burnley go and play United, or they play Arsenal, or they play away in all these difficult grounds. Sean Dyche will tell you, it's very hard to get the decisions against the big clubs. And when you do go to an away ground like Anfield, I think you've got to need everything to go on your side. And I think it was a shocking decision. I think the referee did bottle it.
Yeah, and to be fair, like live, I did kind of half think Jordan Henderson felled him, which was the only kind of saving grace. But quick word on that, I guess the example Jamie Carragher used against Micah Richards, which is kind of the same point, was Southampton got that VAR decision overturned against City, which, if it was reversed, I can't really see City again denied a penalty like that at the Etihad.
Yeah, probably correct. To be fair, like I think Sean's gonna hit the nail on the head with it, really. I mean, and it's one of those where the game is so finely poised too. Like the game is in the balance. I think the ref probably seen that too, took that into consideration. Like at Anfield, like if Liverpool go down to 10 men, you'd imagine City win that game. Like I mean, don't want to say fairly comfortably, but you imagine they do. So I don't know. He did. The ref kind of did bottle it. Yeah, he probably did. Like it was a red card. The fact it was Milner, interesting. Yeah, good pro kind of thing. Is it something like that narrative? But they got away with one, and Pep was fuming. And I know, like this, you kind of see like the memes and stuff like that of Pep going nuts on the side and stuff like that. But to be fair, I was like, all right, yeah, he's got a very, very valid point. And then Mane goes and scores, makes it 2-1, and you're sitting there. I'm looking at him thinking, all right, not fair. I would be fuming as well. So, yeah, I think it was a red card all day long, 100%.
Yeah, I know Klopp did it for the game, and Milner had to be taken off, but just to do it straight away, it's just winding Guardiola up.
Yeah. I mean, everyone knows that's
including Milner. I think Milner's well able to look after himself the last 10 minutes, but Klopp's like, no, we'll take him off just to wind everyone up.
And two of the big refereeing incidents from the weekend. One is the Chelsea goal that was disallowed against Southampton, who was the VAR official, Mike Dean, and who was fourth official on Sunday, that got probably more airtime than the ref did, was Mike Dean. So like, intentionally or not, it just follows him, and it's comedy gold.
Yeah, if you haven't watched Mike Dean with Tubbs on YouTube playing golf, it's well worth Tubes, sorry, not Tubbs, Tubes. It's well worth the listen. So, Oisin, we're going to go to you for this, and I want you to explain to listeners the context.
Yeah.
Well, we would have been talking about this anyway, but I think it's only fitting to have you on for the pod on the Watford manager gate, because you were on the Team 33 Buy Off the Ball podcast throughout the summer, or during the summer, and you made a comment that got back to a lot of Watford fans on Twitter, and you've you felt the irk of a lot of them.
So I was kind of set up a little bit by end of call. I'll blame him off the balls and call. No, I won't. So we were talking about mid-table teams that are kind of like, I think he used the term irrelevant. I didn't use the term irrelevant, but those mid-table teams that are kind of not great, not terrible, that kind of just sit there, and you're kind of like, will they do much this season, won't they? So I think obviously then Watford came up. So I mentioned that, well, I mean, I was like, you don't really need to know that much about Watford. Like, I mean, I don't know many of their players. I was like, I also don't really know who their manager is, because there's really no point in knowing who their manager is, because he's probably going to get sacked, because like Watford just go to your manager, it's like it's running out of style. So I said this. It was slightly tongue in cheek when I was like, I could name like loads of Premier League players, but I could probably name only like 3 Watford players. I was like, they're just Quique Sanchez Flores regens. Like, I was like, every Watford manager is just Quique Sanchez Flores in like a different, wearing a mask or like in a different suit or something like that. So of course this went out and they clipped it up, put it on Twitter, and Watford fans picked it up, and I was a Friday night. I remember I had to like mute my phone, because like just getting hammered by Watford fans. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't do any research. How can you say this for this, that, and the other? And then what happened? Watford went and sacked Xisco Munoz, and I had a little chuckle to myself. Dan, I will say that I had a little chuckle to myself when I heard the news. But
just to read out the stats on it. So Watford have sacked a manager in 2011, 2012, 2013. They sacked 3 managers in 2014. Then 1 manager in each of the 2015, 16, 17, 18, before sacking 2 managers each in 2019 and 2020. And then obviously 2021 as well.
But I don't see, like, it's mind-boggling, like, because where do these Watford owners think that they're going to finish? Like, genuinely, they're 14th. Like, they lost to Leeds, and to be fair, they were abysmal against Leeds, really, really poor. But like, they're still sitting in a decent position, all things considered. Like, they have more points than Leeds, like, this season. Like, they've I think 7 points from 7 games, which when you're a newly promoted side, you look at Norwich, they've got 1 point, and they're horrendous, and there's no real talk. I mean, maybe within Norwich fan base there might be, but like general talk, there's no real general talk of Farke being in any kind of real trouble, I don't think. And you're looking at Watford, and like you're hearing these things come out after Leeds game that like, oh, he's in trouble, or Xisco Munoz is in trouble, and you're kind of like, that seems a little bit rash. Like, I was looking it up as well. Like, he's got the highest win percentage of any Watford manager in history, like the joint highest with Jokanovic from like 2014 or 2015. So you're kind of thinking, I don't know what Watford's owners think they are as a club, because let's be honest, they've become a little bit of a yo-yo club. Like, I mean, if they go down this season, they'll probably keep a lot of their players, like they did the season beforehand, and they'll probably do really, really well in the Championship and maybe go up again. But that's probably what they are. I mean, they're going to want to do is kind of establish themselves as a Premier League club, and they haven't necessarily. I know they were for a few years, but they haven't been able to do it for a really, really long time, and that's probably what they want to do. But I think the Watford owners maybe think that they should be pushing for like top 8, top 10. I'm not really sure. I mean, they had Javi Gracia, who he lasted like 66 games, the longest in a while. He got them to the FA Cup final. I know they got hockeyed, I think, by City, but like, he still got the sack in the end too. So it's kind of one of these that it's probably just that their business model is just, okay, anything goes remotely kind of bad, let's just bring someone else in. That's the only change, really. Because I genuinely, it baffles me as to what when the Watford owners are in the boardroom and they're talking, what are they ahead of the season? What are they saying? What's realistic for us? Like, what are they saying? Are they saying top 8, top 10? And if it's not that, doesn't matter. We'll just sack it. Like, 7 games in, they're 14, which is really pretty decent for a newly promoted side. And he's still getting the chop. And he rescued them, because when they had, I think it was Vladimir Ivic, I think that was his name, the last Watford manager. They were really struggling at the start of the season. They're really struggling, and they had a superb squad for that division. last season. I remember at the start of the season seeing it. I think they had like the likes of Glenn Murray, Troy Deeney, Joe Pedro up front, Ismail Assar, who's been excellent this season. And you're looking at that and you're thinking, oh, that should destroy the championship. And they were seriously struggling at the start. Xisco Munoz came in, eventually they found form, went up second. And you're thinking, oh, well, they might cause a little bit of a stir in the Premier League. I mean, I don't think anyone was expecting them to do that great, but like to be 14th, I'm kind of sitting there thinking, yeah, it's probably actually better than I expected. But obviously it's not good enough for Watford's owners. So I mean, I can't get my head around it at all.
Yeah, well, Oisin, I regret to inform you that the commenters are back in the YouTube, only this time in YouTube and not Twitter. So just one of them now, they're a little bit some of the language. But look, I'm on Andrew's point here, Sean, and a yo-yo club. We stayed in the Prem for 6 years, went down once, whatever. We were down yo-yo. I suppose, Sean, there's nothing wrong, I suppose, about being a yo-yo club in the sense that there's a lot of championship clubs in mid-table that would love to be a yo-yo club going to the Premier League, and because a yo-yo club means you're either in the Premier League or you're challenging at the top of the championship.
Yeah, well, you have clubs like Ipswich and Nottingham Forest, two massive clubs that weren't long ago playing in Europe, and they haven't been in the Premier League and God knows how long. And Ipswich are in League One, and Nottingham Forest are really struggling this year, although Steve Cooper's come in, the ex-Swansea manager, and done a really good job, and I think that could be a really good appointment for Forest. So like there isn't wrong with being a yo-yo club. Norwich have, if you do it right, it can be quite a successful model, and Norwich have done that quite well. I just think with some clubs, your Fulhams, when they get to the Premier League, they spend big money and they aren't prepared for relegation. Players are on big wages. Your Bournemouth, they really did well in the Premier League. They kind of survived for a number of years, and then they were kind of caught out with big wages and players in the Championship. And it's only now that they're kind of reevaluating themselves in the Championship and look good for a promotion push. It's just bizarre that the Watford owners, it'd make a pretty good game if you were to ask people, did they manage Watford, yes or no, and you'd probably be saying yes. So like, I'll ask you, Dan, did Sean Dyche manage Watford?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Did Brendan Rodgers?
No.
He did?
Yeah, he did.
He did.
Yeah. Did Gianfranco Zola manage Watford?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
he was the manager against Palace in that playoff final, because I'm watching that documentary.
So it's quite an interesting game you could play with that. But with Watford, like Claudio Ranieri, I'm not sure how it's going to work with him. The Xisco guy was quite heavy metal, if you like. It was really intense. He got them really firing towards the end of last season in the Championship. They were really looking like a Premier League side and waiting. And they went on a brilliant run at the end. She mentioned some of the players they had, Joe Pedro, Ismail Assar. So, they had the likes of Tom Cleverley, Will Hughes. They just looked like a really, really good side towards the end of last season. I watched them a couple of times. But now you're looking at it and it's like, I'd be putting them down towards relegation. I mean, if you're sitting in that Watford dressing room, and bearing in mind they have lost a couple of big names over there, and I think when you have as many managers as Watford have, then the dressing room becomes an even more important place. And it does feel like if you're sitting at that dressing room, it's probably just going like, this is absolute bizarre. What is going on? What's continued to go on? Look, it's worked for them. It has worked for them. But it's quite an interesting way to run a football club. Probably not the most cost effective way. And if you're the Watford manager, you're making sure you get a good payout when you do get the chop. But it's been a bizarre couple of years for them. It's a bit ridiculous at the end of the day, but it's worked for them, so you can't complain.
I'll take the yo-yo club criticism. I'll take that comment, but like that also goes to show, like, you stayed in the Premier League for 6 years and you still went through about 14 different managers in that time. So like, you're still even when they're not doing badly, you're still changing it. Like, it just makes absolutely no sense to me. It must. I know, obviously, like, as you mentioned, Don, like it does kind of work for them in a way, but like for the players, it must be so jarring. Like to kind of, because the styles like are quite different. And you said there, Sean, like this community has played pretty decent football, kind of gung ho football. Like, is Ranieri going to play that style? Probably not. Like, so like it must be very, very difficult for those players to kind of have to adjust every single year nearly, like to different styles, different managers, different ways of thinking. Like, I don't know. I just can't. It baffles me. It really does baffle me.
You can have too much of a good thing, I think, Oisin. I think the Saints, a small bit, had a really good model, and now you're looking at them. I don't know, like if the recruitment's been as good, that's on a different kind of scale. But I guess with the managers who Watford, they keep doing this, like you said.
And what's the end game too? You know what I mean? Like, is there one, like, because like they're surely just living? Are they just living season by season? Because they must be, if there's no, like, there never seems to be any content. Like, you look at someone like Brighton who brought in Graham Potter for Chris Hughton, and you're kind of like, okay. I remember at the time that was kind of criticised. Hughton kept them up, and they were probably, people thought, punching above their weight. But then you bring in Graham Potter, and like, it's clear to see. I mean, last season they struggled a little bit, but it's clear to see now it's kind of paying off that, like, this is what they were wanted something more progressive. They wanted this style of football. This is where the future of Brighton was to be. But what is that for Watford? Like, is it just a case of, well, we'll just every season we'll just kind of keep seeing how it goes and play it by ear, and like we'll get another manager and hope that maybe we'll kind of just push up the league a little bit more? It just, as I said, I'm mostly just confused by the whole thing, really.
Yeah, the final comment.
They probably thought they were onto a good something with the likes of Marco Silva, and like, it's just like it actually is staggering the names they have, and like it doesn't seem to be said a lot, but you don't know actually who's making the decisions there, and like, you'd be interested to see how Ranieri gets on, but I think they're really going to struggle now towards the end of the season. But one thing they do have is attacking quality. It's just whether they can find a way of getting through, because I think Ranieri's first 6 games are really, really tough. So it's going to be a baptism of fire for him. And after what happened with him and Fulham towards the end, you're probably not filled with confidence. So he's going to be up against it.
He did do a good job.
If he lasted the season, if he lasted the season, I'd be hugely surprised. Hugely surprised if he lasted the season. I don't think they'll give him the full season. Remember, wasn't it Nigel Pearson? Was it Nigel Pearson came in last time they were in the Premier League? Yeah. And like they were essentially gone down. I think they brought him in for, I can't even remember, but I genuinely don't think Ranieri lasted the season. I don't.
Yeah, just because I think you mentioned something about clauses, Sean. So we have a comment from Spurs fan, thoughts on the Arsenal player staff, fans and social pages acting like Arsenal in the Premier League, the Champions League, the Eurovision, the World War III and Ryder Cup when they beat Tottenham 3-1 last week, only team behind them a week later. The reason I'm reading that out is Nuno has a clause in his contract that if he doesn't finish in the top 6, Spurs will have to pay him compensation if they sack him. So I don't know how they negotiate that, but that's what reported by The Athletic today. So Daniel Levy, say what you want about him, but I think he's negotiated a really good deal there, because me personally, I think they might be a tad bit outside the top 6, despite the fact they have a good run of fixtures over the next while. But look, we'll move on to Azerbaijan versus Ireland and the Ireland squad. Sean, we'll go to you maybe first. It's probably a massive game for Stephen Kenny, more so than the Irish team itself. Like this culture war that's sort of developing, I can only see it getting worse and worse the more results, and we can't quite get the wins. Obviously, the answer, like most of these culture wars, is somewhere in the middle, I take it.
Look, I think with Kenny, I don't think there's any game that's not a big game from at the moment. I think every game he's been judged, he's been scrutinised, and that's just what comes with the territory when you've had the start that he's had and when you have the job that he has. Look, he's made a couple of interesting decisions in the last few squads and camps, and what he's picked, and this, the type of player he's picked. Having looked with a few injuries, having looked at that squad, it does look very bare. It does look like not a lot to be working with. It's quite interesting. I saw an interview, I think Irish Fan TV or Ireland Fan TV did with Matt Doherty. And Matt Doherty was speaking of, like, we're being coached by Anthony Barry, Keith Andrews. Like, we're getting coach going there. We're really enjoying it. They want them to stay. But I don't think it's them Stephen Kenny has to win over. And I don't necessarily think it's the kind of the match going fans, if you like, haven't been at the game. I just think he just has to probably win over the general football fans, if you like, and that is still an important people to win over. He has to get results. And at the end of the day, the match going fans and their enthusiasm for that, and the players will only go so far, and they'll probably only go to the end of this campaign, because when we start our next qualification campaign, we can't be in any doubt whether Stephen Kenny is the man for the job, because he has to deliver for Euro 2024. It will be. So it's an interesting international break, but they all have been basically since we started the podcast, and since we started the Stephen Kenny era. Like, I can't think of one international break where I haven't been a little bit apprehensive of what we could see or what we might see. So look, on the squad front, yeah, I see we have a comment there about Anthony Scully. Like, I haven't seen a lot of him this year. I haven't seen a lot of Will Keane. All I know is he scored on the weekend. But calls like that, they kind of have to work, because if they don't, it just feels like another backward step. So it's an interesting couple of games, but in the grand scale of things, it's not important. But for Stephen Kenny, obviously it is.
Mm. Oisin, before I bring you in, I might just read out the squad.
Yep.
Bazunu, who plays for Portsmouth on loan from City, Kelleher for Liverpool, Travers, Bournemouth are the three goalkeepers, Doherty plays for Spurs, Cyrus Christie for Fulham, Duffy, Brighton, Egan, Sheffield United, Enda Stevens, Sheffield United, Ryan Manning, Swansea City, James McLean, Wigan Athletic now, Oma Bamidele, Norwich, Nathan Collins, Burnley. The midfielders then, we've got Josh Cullen playing regularly at Anderlecht, Jeff Hendrick at Newcastle, Heron at Aston Villa, Harry Arter, Forest, Jamie McGrath, St Mirren, Jason Knight, Derby County. And then the attackers, which kind of makes up the front three, I guess, is the Callum Robertson with West Brom, Aaron Connolly with Brighton, James Collins with Cardiff, Daryl Horgan with Wickham, Adam Ida with Norwich, Troy Parrott with MK Dons on loan from Spurs, Ogbeni from Rotherham, and then the big one that kind of caused the most stir, as the comment mentioned, is Will Keane for Wigan. So just read out his stats: 10 goals in 32 games last season in the league, in League One for Wigan, and he's got 4 goals in his first 9 games this season.
Yeah, Will Keane, like everyone, that made me sit back and go, oh, that's an odd one. I mean, to be honest, I didn't know if Will Keane was having a good season or not. Really, I hadn't even considered him. I know Mick McCarthy spoke about him before, when he was in charge, about him. They wanted to have him switch, and there was talk of him potentially being called up. I don't think he was ready at the time and things like that. And from there, I kind of put him completely out of my mind. Really, hadn't even considered that he would be someone to call up, but from what I've heard, I think Kenny is looking at him as like more of a 10, because that's the kind of role he plays. He plays off, I think it's Charlie Wyke, is the Wigan striker. He plays off him for Wigan, apparently, in that number 10 role. So maybe he sees him as a little bit of a link man, something kind of that McGoldrick ilk, because again, like Sean, I haven't seen much of him, haven't really considered him, but from what I've heard, he's good on the ball. His link up play is quite good. He's kind of that McGoldrick ilk, where he's kind of a little bit taller, but just has a nice touch, can link the play. Maybe that's where Kenny sees him, something along those lines. But I agree with that comment. And I think, again, not to say I've seen Scully play that all that often, but his stats aren't really, he's got 11 goals this season. He's playing in the same league as Will Keane. He's playing in the same league as Troy Parrott, Daryl Horgan, James McLean. It's an odd one for me that he's not in that squad, considering his form and considering the level that he's playing at is similar to a lot of other players in the squad. A couple of others, there was nothing really, there was no other real decisions. I was good to see Ogbene actually in there, because I thought he was really exciting when he came on against, I can't quite, Qatar, I think it was, or maybe it was Hungary, one of them games he came on when he was in the squad the first time. And I thought he looked really, really lively. I know he hasn't been, I don't think he's been a regular starter with Rotherham this season, but I think he brings something. He brings pace. He brings a bit of energy. He looks like he can give something different. That's what he looked like off the bench anyway in that game. So I'm excited to see him in there. But there's a couple of strange ones. Harry Arter. I think he sees Harry Arter as maybe one of his only kind of holding midfield options, and he's kind of forced into picking him. I'm not sure on Arter, really, to be honest. I think it's a bit past it for him. I know he's not really getting. He's in there at Charlton, but I think he's kind of in and out at Charlton too, and they're really struggling in League One. They're, I think, second bottom of the table, so that was an odd one for me. But again, you look at the younger players, they're the ones you kind of want to be seeing. Dele, excellent in the last break. I think he started one game in the Premier League, but still young, so not that bad. Nathan Collins looked good against Norwich apparently at the weekend for Burnley, his first Premier League start, so that's good. So Bazunu, obviously, Kelleher, good battle for that number 1 shirt. But again, where are they going to struggle? It's going to be up front, isn't it? Like, we all kind of know that's what it's going to be. Troy Parrott's been decent for MK Dons, all things considered. I know he's notched a couple of assists. I think he scored 3, maybe 4 goals, which is not too bad. Ida's not getting game time, which is probably a little bit worrying. And then the rest of your attacking options are kind of League One Championship players. So Aaron Connolly again, who's kind of in and out. So like, that's where I'm not breaking any news by saying this, but that's where Ireland are probably going to struggle again. And is the hope maybe that Will Keane can provide something different, a different option off the bench late on against Azerbaijan, something along those lines maybe. Bene with that bit of pace to add in there. I don't know. I think it'll be a tough game. I think every kind of international break comes up and I get this bit of optimism, and not to say I'm not optimistic about the future as a whole, but just in the context of taking this game as a singularity, I think I kind of look at it and I think, oh, well, this could be the time when it kind of will actually change and we'll get that good result. But I still think it's going to be a tough game. I still don't really know where goals are going to come from. There's plenty of positives in the young players, in the defence, goalkeeper, but it's going to be so tricky. And patience. I don't want to say patience weren't a thing, because I think Serbia results helped it a lot. But as Sean said, like, getting those, I don't know if casual fans is the correct term for it, but probably the non-match going fans who maybe just watch the highlights, maybe just have it on the background, maybe just see the result. Like, it's very hard to convince those that there's actually something going on here when if you watch the whole 90 minutes, you see there's progression. It's very hard to convince someone when you draw with Azerbaijan or you lose to Luxembourg and things like that. So patience might continue to run out, but I think this will be a tough game. I think it's a big game, but I think it's a tough game. I think where Ireland will struggle is goals. And to go back to the original comment there from Paul, I think the Scully decision was one that confused me, in the sense that Kenny has proven that he'll take risks. He's proven that he'll bring players in if they're in form, if they're young. It doesn't really matter. I mean, he put Amababa Dele on for that was his first game against Portugal, one of the best teams in the world. Threw him on like first half. He played a blinder, so he's not afraid to make those decisions. So that's why the Scully one was a little bit of a
strange one.
A surprise one. Yeah, a strange one. But
Sean, maybe to bring you in just on, well, Josh Cullen, really, the fact that he's played 10 games for Anderlecht this season out of 10 in the league, 4 games in I think it's did I see Conference League or the Europa League, whatever qualifications they were playing. That's a huge positive. Good news Irish story. Should that be a little bit more drummed up, I guess, by people like ourselves?
Well, I've kind of written out an 11 here, and I'm not sure if he's gone 5 at the back or 4 at the back. And now the one thing you would say is there does seem to be a lot more settledness now in our team, and one of the positives being Callum Robinson started the season, and obviously we all know the problems he's had with COVID and injuries. So hopefully he'll be all right come the 2 games. But if Connolly's fit, you've got, if he plays 5 at the back, obviously Bazunu in goal. You could have Duffy, Omo, Debele, Johnny Egan as your kind of back 3, and your 2 wing backs, Darty Stevens in the midfield. I'm not sure if he'll want energy in there, so you might put Josh Cullen maybe with Jason Knight or Hendrick, and up front, like I think he has to play Robinson, Connolly, and Adam Ida. And it does seem like in that front 3, that probably our best front 3 on paper, probably the 3 there that are going to cause any team the most problems. I don't think there's anyone else, certainly in the squad there, that is better than them. Josh Cullen has been someone who was probably late starting in his international career and is kind of, molded into that role pretty nicely. Although I didn't think he had a great game against it was Serbia, I think. It's hard to remember all the teams we played. But it's an interesting one. Like, I saw Enda Stevens play Sheffield United against Middlesbrough in a midweek a few weeks ago, and he was appalling, really. Like, he struggled with injuries a lot. He got taken off in that game after I think 70 minutes.
He has played in Sheffield United's last 4 games to give some sort of positive spin.
Yeah, he was really poor against Borough. like there's no one there in the left back position that's really jumping out that's going to take it. I mean, Ryan Manning's
James
been,
McLean aside, maybe.
yeah, and McLean aside, he's kind of been. I see. It's hard to know what way he does go. I'd like to see four at the back. Duffy and Egan, with Doherty, and if you want to go McLean, Stevens, whoever. And then I'd like to see a lot of energy in midfield. So Jason Knight, Josh Cullen, maybe Hendrick again, not having Alan Brown around. He's had a lot of issues since he's played an international and performed well, a couple of camps ago. So I would say is that Kenny's team starting to take shape a little bit. It's probably a little bit too late in terms of obviously this qualification campaign, but just having it written out on paper, it does feel like, he's got 8 or 9 guaranteed starters, and it's probably only a couple of positions where he's going to change. But I really want to see that front three of Robinson, Conley, and Ida, because I think that's as exciting as it gets from an Ireland point of view.
I think it's kind of strong as well. Like just from listening to it, read out on paper, Sean. Like you're kind of going through and you're going like, it's not. It's for what it is. It's strong enough. Do you know what I mean? It's an exciting enough when everyone is fit. When like what you have at your disposal, when you're getting the most out of what you have at your disposal, it's not the worst team on paper, really. And I think Jason Knight coming back actually is a positive too. One I probably should have mentioned earlier, but I know he's kind of still assimilating back into the starting 11, after Rooney clattered him in training. But he was great. He's been great whenever he's played under Kenny. And as you said, Sean, he adds that bit of energy to the Irish midfield. I think he'd be a huge positive coming back. But yeah, no, just to kind of point out, I just think when you read it out, I kind of went, oh, actually, on paper, if it's the strongest team, provided obviously everyone stays fit between now and the game, then it should be enough to beat Azerbaijan.
We've been here before, lads, haven't we?
Yeah. The one thing I would say, Dan, is I just hope Kenny doesn't make. There's been a couple of times in his reign that you just think, oh, he's made a mistake there, or he hasn't quite got it right. And I think that midfield's a big issue for me. I think if we do play that front three up front and we play two in midfield, I'd like to see Jason Knight in there, maybe in place of Hendrick. I know Hendrick scored at the weekend, but I just think we need more energy in there. We need to be, really aggressive, getting out and trying to get on the counter attack. And that's the thing. I think, we need to score goals, and that free is, like I said earlier, it's just gets from us. It's as exciting as it gets. But I just hope Kenny doesn't make that. I think he's made a couple of times where he just hasn't quite picked the right player.
Yeah, Oisin, final thoughts. I guess the back four, the back five, it's probably conundrum. Like your back five sets up well against a Portugal and a Serbia, but for me, we're not good enough to play with a back five against an Azerbaijan or a Luxembourg, where a back four gives us that one extra player in midfield, and suddenly we might have that 60 or 70% possession. That could potentially mean a 1-0 victory as opposed to 1-1 against Azerbaijan or a 1-0 defeat to Luxembourg.
Yeah, I like the extra player in midfield, definitely. I think 5 should be reserved for those. I don't want to call them bigger games because they're all big games now, but for the bigger teams, I suppose, the ones where you kind of have to set up a little bit like that, I think should be reserved for that, and then you should go with the 4, and I get your extra man in midfield for the likes of the teams I don't want to say you should be beating because that's giving us too much credit, but those kind of 3rd, 4th, 5th seed type teams, I think that's where you kind of have to go with the 4 in the midfield. But it will be interesting to see how he does set up, and I think kind of Sean touched on a little bit where he's made a couple of selection errors or formation errors per se. I know actually Keith Andrews spoke about it on Off the Ball last week, and I think he was asked about kind of the lack of continuity per se in the fact that Kenny's made so many changes in every kind of game, it seems like, and a lot of them now, in fairness, I thought a lot of them have been enforced with COVID. He's been very unlucky with injuries and things like that too. But I think there probably does, and I think we probably spoke about this last time too, in the sense that there does need to be some kind of continuity especially in the midfield, because the chopping and changing that's done there seems to be like every single game there's a new kind of 2, a new 1, 3, whatever. So I think it's crucial that kind of, if you can get the stability that kind of seems to be there at the back. I know Darryl Shea's out now, but that's an injury issue. if we can get the stability that seems to have kind of developed at the back, if we can move that into the midfield now and kind of get some kind of continuity whereby Kenny knows that, okay, maybe only one of these positions is.
I think we might have just lost Oisin there. Sean, wait, I might just remove him there from the stream for a second. Yeah, so Sean, final thoughts, prediction on. I was just going to ask you guys for predictions, really. Predictions on the game Saturday.
Well, yeah, look, I can't remember the prediction for the games we've done before, but I do feel pretty confident in this one. Like I said, that starting 11 that I called out, what I think is going to be the four at the back with Bazunu, Duffy, Egan, Darty, McLean or Stevens. I think the midfield should be Cullen, Hendrick and Nye, and then Connolly, Robinson and Nye. That there does seem to be a little bit more quality in there, and I just hope they can get it done. I do think we'll win, and God, it'll be a much needed win.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure we'll get Oisin back before the end, but my thanks to you, Sean, for coming on the podcast.
Cheers, Dan.
Yeah, at Tackling Sport, you can get us on social media. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be doing just Monday night live episodes. Over the next few weeks, I think we might have Oisin back there to say goodbye, but if not, we just see you there, Oisin. Sorry, yeah, we were just saying,
lads. Apologies.
We were saying our goodbyes, but your final maybe prediction for the game.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm going to go with the optimism because I always kind of seem to fall into that really before every international break. So I do think, it's coming. It is coming. I think the Serbia game kind of proved that it is. And, I think if, again, a lot of it does depend on fitness and making sure that, if it does turn out that, the likes of Connolly, Ida, Robinson, you got Knight back, Cullen in a bit of form, if it all kind of clicks, I think they should beat them 2-0 maybe. I want to say 2-0, 2-1. But I think realistically, 2-1. I think it has to be a win. A draw. It's not like you can't. It just can't. Yeah, do you know what I mean? It just can't be another draw. It has to be a win at this stage. And I think it's a game that is tough enough that a win is probably, you look at it and go, okay, that's a good result. Whereas a draw, it's not a Serbia, it's not a Portugal. The draw at home, the Portugal result helped kind of ease the pain, I suppose, or kind of gave a little bit of credit for the draw. It kind of excused the Azerbaijan draw a little bit. Whereas now, I think the Serbia result was good, but it has to be a win and it has to come soon. But for me, I think it'll be this time. I think it'll be 2-1. I think that'll set Ireland up nicely then for the last. I know there's Qatar coming up and Portugal as well, so. I think they'll get it. I don't think it'll be convincing, and I don't think it'll be probably overly pretty, all things considered. But I think it'll be 2-1.
Yeah, I always get nervous when we're talking about what happens if we lose or draw. It bears not to think about, to be honest with you. But yeah, Oisin, thanks a million for coming on the podcast.
No problem, lads. Thanks, man.
And yeah, at Tackling Sport, you can get us on social media. We'll be back on Monday. Next Monday then to review the Ireland game and hopefully and preview the Qatar friendly that Paul McGrath is promoting on Tuesday night. So hopefully you get a good crowd there. I'm sure Paul McGrath will be delighted if Stephen Kenny can get his first competitive win. I'm sure. So that's all from us. My thanks to Sean.
Cheers, Dan.
Cheers. Have a great week. Have a great week. Enjoy the international break. I'm sure everyone's buzzing about it, but we'll be back on Monday. Enjoy it.